happened. So let's go in now. We're going to listen to the prosecution's rebuttal. They've got this real problem about their star witness not showing up, and it doesn't seem like they're going to address why the mother of the children who was there, who would have witnessed at least some of this, she did not take the stand. Let's go back in and listen to them talk about the key words from Jermaine Bass that they say remove all doubt in this case.
You know, it's interesting to sit there and listen to all that and realize she's the swimmer's doing her job. She's trying to find anything she can pick apart on the state's case, of course. She went through each witness and tried to find anything that they did wrong, any little tiny mistake. She spent a lot of time talking about Shirley Bass. And she ignored the strongest and the most important piece of evidence in this entire case. The words of her own client. The words of her own client, the first words that came out of his mouth when the deputies come in there to this horrific scene. She completely ignored that, ladies and gentlemen. She completely, and in fact, I guess because she's ignoring it so hard, she didn't even get right what he said. He never said he was cleaning the gun. He said he was removing the magazine. That's how much she's ignored it, is that she didn't even get the words he said right. Listen to the tape. Listen to what he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. I wrote down the quote exactly. He never said anything about cleaning the gun. But she's not listening to those words because she doesn't want you to listen to those words.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper argument.
Sustained. Those words are the strongest and most compelling piece of evidence in this entire case. She wants to tell you, well, that doesn't tell you who shot that gun. You know who tells you who shot that gun? He tells you who shot that gun. Jermaine Bass tells you who shot that gun. He said, I did it. And those deputies and those detectives began an investigation believing that man said it was an accident. So they want to look and see what's going on. And then it comes to like, this couldn't possibly be an accident with 5 shots. But he admitted it was him. And one of the last things Mr. Lemmer said, something to the effect of, who is he protecting? Well, where's there any evidence he's protecting anybody? Well, I can tell you who he's protecting. He's protecting himself. Those words, that lie, was protecting himself. He's caught. Hand in the cookie jar. Children shot. He's in the house. Murder weapons in his drawer. He's holding the baby. What does he say? It was an accident. That's the first lie he could come up with, right? You couldn't blame Shirley. We don't even know Shirley was outside. He said Shirley was in her room. Shirley wasn't in that room, for sure. And why would he protect Shirley? Why would he protect Shirley Bass if she shot her children? He wouldn't do that. You know, earlier in the night, he was over there confronting her about whether she'd been drinking. Did he even protect her? That common sense says to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen. No. He came up, he knew he was caught, he came up with the first lie he could think of. It was an accidental discharge. And they're like, well, for both of them? Yeah. I was taking out my magazine and it went off. But she wants you to ignore that. She barely even talked about it.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper argument and shifting the burden.
Improper argument sustained.
That is the strongest piece of evidence in this case. You can rely on that evidence and that evidence alone. That's an admission, ladies and gentlemen. He admitted to those deputies that he fired that weapon. Came up with a ridiculous excuse, but he admitted it. But he admitted it, leaving just enough truthful nuggets in it because he couldn't quite figure out the right way to lie. So that's what he says. Accidental discharge. Okay, that's the first thing he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. right? They was both in bed. He said that. They was both in bed. No one told them where they were or what was going on or where they'd been shot. That's actually true. They were both in bed. How did he know that? How did he know they were both in bed? Because he's the one who pulled the trigger. They was both in bed. Physical evidence shows they were both shot in that bed. I was in their room. Now he even puts the room where they were shot. He's got the bed, the room. That's all true. So he's mixed in his lie with a little truth. I was in their room. They was both in bed. Where was Shirley? She was in her room. Again, those are his words, not my words. Not words by the Corporal Gabot. Not words from Anna Cox. Not words from Jennifer Michael. Not words from any of those people. Those are the words of the defendant, the man right there. So every time Ms. Schlemmer says, well, that doesn't tell you who shot the gun. Well, I'll tell you who told you who shot the gun. He did. So Ms. Schlemmer said, he said, clean the gun. That's not true. Another thing, and again, you need to rely on your own memory of the evidence. You need to rely on the evidence that you take back there with you. But she pulled that picture out to show the drawer open and the gun being... Watch the video camera of the body-worn camera of Daniel Jones when he goes in to clear that room. That drawer where that gun is found is almost completely closed. It may be open about this much. It is clear that they opened it more to put the markers on there. So yes, in fact, the defendant did take that gun after his two children were shot in the head, and rather than lend aid or render aid to them, he took that gun and he walked through that house while his children were bleeding out in their beds, took the time to do that, remove the magazine. Oh, again, a little nugget of truth thrown in there with that lie. I was taking out the magazine. Yeah, he did take out the magazine. Why, when your children have just been shot in the head, are you taking the time to walk down the hallway, go into your bedroom, pull out the magazine, place the gun?
State Attorney John Terry using the defense's words against him. He didn't take the stand in this case. He doesn't have a requirement to, but the words that he told police, that's what the prosecution is hanging their hat on. We do have to squeeze in a break, but when we come back, the prosecution is going to pay close attention and talk to this jury about the defense's insinuation that the 8-year-old child victim was the one who pulled the trigger. That's next. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae in for Michael Ayala. Back now to Tampa, Florida, where we have been watching closing arguments in the Bedtime murder trial. Defendant Jermaine Bass is facing multiple charges, including first-degree murder in connection to the fatal shooting of his 5-year-old daughter, Jayla. His 8-year-old son was also injured during this incident. And the prosecution is about to address the allegation from the defense in this case that somehow this 8-year-old victim who didn't take the stand in the case may have somehow been involved. Let's go in for more of the state's rebuttal and final word to this jury.
Maybe JJ did grab that gun. Maybe it was transferred DNA. But there's no evidence that JJ would have shot this gun. He's an 8-year-old boy. No evidence he had any animosity with his sister, any issues with his sister. Those shots were targeted. But also remember, he shot himself. Are we to suggest that he shot his sister 3 times, then shot into the wall, and then shot himself in the head? Oh, and hit his hand at the same time? He didn't shoot that gun. That's silly. It's silly to believe that he would shoot his sister and shoot himself. And that just makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. No sense. So yes, this DNA was on there, but it's easily explained. You know whose DNA is not on there? The person Ms. Schlemmer's talked about the most in the first half of her closing, Shirley Bass. She is excluded from the grip and trigger. Excluded. She did not hold that gun that night. If she had held that gun and fired those shots, you better believe some of her DNA would be on that gun. She did not have that gun. There's zero physical evidence whatsoever that suggests Shirley Bass did this. You know, and I know that you all may be sitting here wondering, we didn't get to hear from Shirley. I wonder what she said. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. You did hear from Shirley. All of you did. You heard from her in that 911 call. And I urge you very hard to listen to that call. Listen to it, compare it with the video we have of her outside Daquan Evans' apartment. Listen to how her voice changes, timeline and everything. Because I'm going to suggest to you what happens. And you watch this and you will see that this is in fact what happens. And listen to the audio carefully and you will hear this. First of all, notice that when she is outside, the very first time she's outside, and you need to watch the video very closely. It is hard to see sometimes. But if you watch it enough times, you will know where the door is to the Bass household. You will see her come out, and she comes out at 20:21:15, which is 10, or I'm sorry, 20 at 10:21. So she comes out a while before she ends up at Daquan Evans' house. And watch her out there. You'll see her in the parking lot, and she's kind of walking like this, and then she'll walk, then she kind of walks another way, and then you'll see her walking this way before she ever comes to the area where Daquan Evans is. She's out of that house for a while. So what does she say when she's on that phone call? You hear her, she's frantic. She's terrified. She can't believe what's going on. She knows there were gunshots in her house. She says, someone shot my whole family. She's petrified. She doesn't know what's going on. She knows there were gunshots. And then she says, I don't know what happened in this house. She doesn't know. She didn't see it. She tells you right there, I don't know what happened in this house. She knows there were gunshots in her house. And she's scared for the safety of her family. But she says, I don't know what happened in this house, but she is scared. You can hear that in her voice. But she's not super confrontational, right? You can just hear she's like scared, and she's not making a lot of sense when she talks. But then watch on the video. She has that phone for about 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so, 2 minutes, 40 seconds. And you'll see she starts walking back into the parking lot, and she heads back to the house. And look at the house. You'll see the door open. And that's when she first screams in really loud, clearly not at the 911 operator, as they would have you believe. She's clearly she's talking to that man right there. She knows he had that gun and she knows he did something. But she doesn't seem to really know what yet at this point, because you don't see her on that phone call, which I urge you to listen to. But it's at the 2 minute and 40 second mark. Her voice, her inflection, everything changes, because at that moment, she is now seeing Jermaine Bass, and she's seeing him holding her boy. She says that man was playing. She doesn't know. All she knows is that her husband, of all people, had a gun, and then suddenly gunshots are going off, and he walks out with his son in his arms. And that's when there's a realization, because you'll hear that now suddenly she starts to get some more specific. My babies, my kid been shot. She doesn't say my kids, she said my kid. singular. At this point in time, she probably doesn't even know Jayla shot up there. But now she's seeing JJ. Bring the ambulance. My son is bleeding. My son. Again, she doesn't say Jayla. Why? Because at this point in time, she was outside and she sees her husband come out and he's got the boy. She doesn't even know what's going on with the girl. She doesn't realize that her daughter is dying upstairs. This is Shirley's testimony, ladies and gentlemen. Unfiltered, raw, emotional, at the time, the most trustworthy statement you could possibly get from an individual when they're in the experience at the moment going through it. And what is she telling you, ladies and gentlemen? She doesn't know what's going on, but she knows something bad is happening in her house, which means she's not there, she has nothing to do with it, she's not involved with it. The phone disconnects. You hear it come back in. If you listen, you can tell there's an echo. She's inside that house at that point. She yells at him, leave him alone, don't touch him. She says, I swear to God, if my son died, and you can hear all this on that phone call. And yes, she's very rude to the 911 operator, but remember, she's now realizing that her son is shot in the head. She doesn't know what's going on, she doesn't understand it, but she knows that that man right there, Jermaine Bass, has something to do with it. That man playing with his freaking gun. You know, Ms. Schlemmer wants to talk about how
all right, we are going to bring in former federal prosecutor and president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani, who's with us. And Nima, that's essentially how the prosecution wraps up their rebuttal by saying that, first of all, Shirley didn't need to come in. They have the 911 call, but also that he is the one who did it, using his own words against him.